Well, hello everyone, dear teachers, colleagues, educational community in general. Welcome to this new webinar where I'm broadcasting from home. This is Yang Wei, and we're very happy to have you here today. This is the fourth version of our series of webinars that we have carried out, during this sanitary crisis, this pandemic. First of all, I would like to tell you that we have an incredible trainer today. His name is Rodrigo Arias. He will be talking today about a very critical issue, and which is making possible what seems impossible, turning your remote learning handouts work. I would like to talk to you a little bit about Rodrigo Arias' experience. He holds an MA in School Leadership in Universidad Alberto Hurtado, St. Joseph's University. He is a Cambridge speaking examiner for preliminary assessments and holder of diploma in higher education and diploma on cognitive mediation at Universidad Diego Portales. He has taught English for more than 25 years in elementary and high school programs in both public and private schools, as well as in teaching English programs and English courses in different universities in Chile. He has vast experience as academic director, homeroom teacher, head of English departments, and member of academic committees. Teacher trainer and lecturer for PIAP and different publishing companies and academic institutions. His webinar today will be about, again, making possible what seems impossible, turning your remote learning handouts work. And basically, he will go through, revisiting some essentials that must be considered when designing a learning handout in order to be efficient and focus on learning. He'll go around concepts like learning objectives, scaffolding, metacognition, and feedback, how to use, write, and include them in your learning handouts. I would like to tell you that in your top right corner, you will find the MENTI button, okay, which is, displayed there. It's in yellow. The MENTI button basically allows you to respond to some answers that Rodrigo will be asking you throughout the webinar. So basically, you click on it, you choose the option, you select it, and then you click on submit. The first question you will be asked will have two options. So keep in mind that. Besides, next to this icon, you will find the final evaluation. So once this webinar finishes, please select it and please fill out. Well, thank you again for being here. It's a pleasure to have you all here. We are very happy. And now I want to give a warm welcome to Rodrigo Arias, and let's enjoy this session. Rodrigo.
Good afternoon, everybody. I hope you can see me. Well, first of all, let me tell you that this is an honor to be here. Thank you, Licinia Diaz from Dayton University Publishing, for having me here. And I must be super honest, I'm really nervous. The level of anxiety that I have in this moment probably does not respond to the years of experience that I'm supposed to have. But this is something that I love. And well, I just hope that you're able to see that through this presentation, that I just love what I do. And I wish this was a kind of virus that could be contagious, because the energy is something that we should never lose. All right. Now, regarding the name of this presentation, making possible what seems impossible. Wow, big name. But I think this is crucial to understand that this pandemic has, in a way, triggered the search for different resources that eventually will promote a different kind of learning. Some people talk about synchronic or non-synchronic, long distance, but we are there and our students also are there. Now, this is our menu, all right? And today we will go through 4 different essentials that are important to keep in mind when designing our handouts, okay? And something that I would like to point out before anything else is that let's remember that in our country, due to this pandemic and the schools have been closed down and people are living in confinement, let's remember that many of our students cannot access digital versions of our handouts. So they need to go through paper, printed, traditional material. And a lot of this, the information that I'm going to share with you, is based on the experience that I had a few months ago uh, with a school, a rural school, not rural, but a school in the south of Chile, in which 95% of the students didn't have access to technology. All right. So this is something that we need to keep in mind because education should be granted for all of our kids and not just for some of them. All right. So as I said, today we're going to go through learning objectives, the ones that work, scaffolding in our learning handouts, promoting metacognition in our handouts, and how to provide effective feedback in them. Now, let's start your engines, all right? And may the best teacher win. No, just kidding. Please, we are going to start with a question. So I would like you to go to Mentimeter and answer the first question that we have prepared for you, okay? In this one, remember, you need to choose 2 of the options that are offered there. I will give you a couple of minutes, or just a minute, to get your answers. There you go. Ministries programs and a student's profile. Wow, what an interesting couple of answers. It's amazing. We need to make them work and we need to satisfy some needs. Yes, but answers are changing. That's great. Beautiful. Let's give it one more minute so we can have here of those. All right. So, yes, the ministries programs are always there, and this is something that we need to consider. But let me tell you, my dear colleagues, that despite of everything that we need to juggle with whenever we are writing specific learning objectives, what we need to create is a dialogical relationship between all these elements in order to get what we really want, which is basically to have our students learning. But now let's clarify some concepts that sometimes are not so clear. Learning objectives and learning outcomes. What are those? Well, let's remember let's remember that a learning objective should describe what students should know or be able to do at the end of the course that they couldn't do before. Otherwise, it would be pointless. All right? A learning outcome should clearly state how to demonstrate knowledge or the ability through something concrete. And believe it or not, in the 21st century, 2020, in the middle of the pandemic, we keep on believing that sometimes understand is something that our students can achieve. Yeah, probably. The question is, how do we measure that? Really hard question. Really hard question. Now, learning objectives, to make them work, should be brief, clear, specific statements of what learners will be able to do at the end of a lesson as a result of activities, teaching, and learning that has taken place. And remember, we're not talking about only a set of different exercises. We are, due to the circumstances, we are talking about learning handouts, okay? It's not just a worksheet. Um, they, these learning objectives or outcomes, um, need to be based on the development of three areas of learning: knowledge, skills, and attitudes. Now, when we talk about language, when we talk about English, we know that we develop the linguistic competence of a student through four basic skills. All right? So that is something that we need to keep in mind. But we need to simplify this complex and abstract information. Yes, we know what learning objectives or outcomes are, but how do we write them? Well, these are some tips for you to keep in mind whenever you need to design a new learning handout. All right? First of all, we need to include them in our handouts. Otherwise, the student will not know what they are doing and what for. So, the objectives that we write in our handouts must be clear, measurable, observable, and attainable. They need to be student-centered. They always need to imply actions. That is to say, they need to use verbs that imply doing, okay? And they should start with the phrase at the end of this handout, activities, set of activities, lesson, long distance lesson, you call it as you want to. The student or I will be able to. And what is the difference? Just to clarify this, the traditional form in which probably some of us were taught how to write good learning objectives was at the end of this lesson, the student will be able to. However, new tendencies suggest that we should always write the learning objective based on the student, as if the student would share the same objective. Now, but this continues to be quite complicated. So in order to simplify our duty, I invite you to remember this collection of words that are so much easier to remember, okay? SMART or SHOW. SMART or SHOW are acronyms that will help us remember what a good learning objective should look like and should be like, all right? So when we have, for example, a SHOW learning objective, we remember that it must be student-centered. It needs to describe how to do whatever it is that we're asking our students to do. They need to imply activities that will create a product that is observable. And we need to say when this activity is going to be carried out. It has to have a certain time frame. But there is this another suggestion, I would say, that is called the SMART objective. And the SMART objective needs to be specific and student-centered. It needs to be measurable. Remember, understand. Well, how do you measure that? Quite hard. Attainable. What do I understand by attainable? Doable. All right? It needs to be relevant. It needs to have a purpose. It needs to be meaningful, not only for the teacher, but also to the student. Okay? And it needs to be time framed. These two acronyms will help you remember how to write really good and meaningful, concrete, measurable learning objectives. Now, some of you also consider one of the difficulties or one of the elements to plan, to design a learning objective, the textbooks that we deal with, the ones that we have. Remember, textbooks are not the Bible. Textbooks are, are supposed to be a help, but they cannot become one of the obstacles that you have during the teaching that you are producing. So this is super extremely important. I'm being super emphatic. This is for thought. Teaching is all about decision making. We are always deciding. If we are inside the classroom, we need to to pay attention to everything that is going on at the same time. Our students, the mood, the atmosphere that we're trying to create. We need to take into consideration even the time in which we are supposed to teach. If it is after lunch, before lunch, if it is first time in the morning, if we are tough luck in the last module or the last period of the day, we need we know that we need to make decisions regarding the methodology and the strategies that we're going to deal with, depending on all those elements that we need to consider. Well, when we talk about decision making, we need to remember that all the elements that we saw in the first question need to have a dialogue between them. And I invite you to, I love acronyms, okay? I'm obsessed with them because they simplify our duties. And Soma, well, I must confess that some of you may remember this because in this marvelous novel written by Aldous Huxley, that was the drug that Epsilon people and some of the inhabitants in that brave new world would take. But Soma this time is better than that. It's much better than that. Soma stands for skip, omit, modify, and adapt. Yes, my colleagues, this is the power we have to create and to promote better or higher quality learning among our students. We skip when we define that whatever it is that is included in a textbook that it's part of the program is not that relevant. We omit, and we leave it for later. We omit when we definitely believe that in order to accomplish what a goal proposes, what an objective proposes, and it's not crucial to go through that little step, then we just omit it. We modify in order to make it, I would say, closer to our students. This is something that I have learned through my years of experience. Tom, Mary, Joseph, the ones that appear in our books and our examples, do not exist. They do not exist. So it's very difficult that our students will create a bond with those elements. What if you start using your students' names in your examples? What if we talk about their real natural environment? What about adapting? Adapting the materials, the questions, the exercises, the strategies. So all of our students have access to it and have the possibility to, to do whatever it is that we're asking them to do. I think that this is a very good way to promote inclusion in our classrooms. And that is something that we need to keep in mind. So just to keep it, to keep, to keep it alive, Soma, what a great way to keep in mind when you are designing your learning handouts. Now, moving on. How do we apply Soma? How do we do with that? Well, we need to answer some questions, and these questions need to be thoughtfully answered. What is it that my students must know? Do they need to know it all? And this has to do also with ethics. Do we know it all? I don't think so. Once we have decided what to teach, we need to answer, why is it so relevant? What for my students are learning whatever it is that we have decided them to learn? How can I optimize this learning? Which strategies help my students get this learning, develop this skill in particular? Can all my students learn, do this? If not all of them can, then of course we need to adapt the materials. Do they all have the tools, resources to learn this? Sometimes we ask for materials that just a few of them have access to. And that has to do with the just or fair environment that we also need to create. How long might it take for my students to learn, develop this skill? Sometimes we prepare handouts that, for God's sake, can be answered in 10 minutes. And our students get like, you know, lost in the middle of nowhere saying, and this is it? Or on the other hand, sometimes we say, yes, I'm going to make my students really work. But colleagues, then we need to check them. And it takes forever. And we are exhausted. Confinement is something that has been in everyone's life, not just our students. And trust me, I have a life. And I don't use it only for playing Candy Crush. I use it all the time, okay? As much as I can. I'm sorry, just a joke. All right. Anyways, these questions will help us define and design good learning handouts, having in mind good learning objectives. Finally, and this is crucial, assessment. How do I know if the learning objectives has been accomplished? Okay, this is something that we also need to include in our handouts. This is the way to apply Soma. And remember, it's not the drug, it's just the strategy, it's just the acronym. Now, let's move on. Let's reboot our hard drive. It's time for you to answer a second question. Okay? The second question. What do you understand by scaffolding in the teaching learning process? Please, I will give you a couple of minutes to answer this one, and then we will talk about your beautiful answers. It seems to be that not many of you are familiarized with this concept. Yes, please go to Mentimeter. Go to Mentimeter. All right. Well, as I can see, is to model, practice, and share. Yes, the majority of you, my dear colleagues, are absolutely right. Yes, it's not necessarily to design from simpler to more complex. And this is something that we will clarify um, in the next few minutes, all right? But it's more related to modeling, practicing, and sharing, okay? Look at these images, please. In the one that you have at your left, you will see that there's someone that needs to reach somewhere and unfortunately doesn't know how to. And in the second image, the one that you have to your right, you will see that our activities should help our students reach a certain learning outcome that eventually will help those students get to wherever it is that we want them to get. Okay? If we pay attention to these images, we will see that scaffolding is a process. It's not a moment, it's a process in which teachers model or demonstrate how to solve a problem and then step back, offering support as needed. The theory is that when students are given the support they need while learning something new, they stand a better chance of using that knowledge independently. In other words, through scaffolding, what we do is to take their hands to start this walk through learning, and later on, we let them do it by themselves. Now, this is super, I would say, mistakenly taken sometimes. Scaffolding is not about solving our students' difficulties with learning. No, it's about giving them the resources to solve them as the complexity in learning increases, leading to autonomy. All right? It's not giving them answer, just giving them answer. That is way too simple because in that way we are not teaching. We are learning for them. And that's not our duty. Okay? But the big question here is, wow, and how do I include the scaffolding theory in my learning handouts? That is so complicated. But it's not that. It's not so complicated. And please, here I'm not telling you the truth of pedagogy. No, this is just based on the countless, the impossible to number mistakes that I have made along my career. All right. First of all, we need to take into account our students' background knowledge. Without it, it's impossible to get a deeper contact with them. We teach through our links, emotional, social links. It's really important to model whatever it is that you're asking. Um, let me tell you this, and just to have a parenthesis here. Many of you, my colleagues, haven't had the chance to meet your students face to face in a real classroom. I don't know, many of you may be teaching in ninth grade, and many of those students were part of a different school. They were given the opportunity to attend just 1 week, to attend classes 1 week, and that was it. Colleagues, when you model in one way or another, you're also showing your identity, your personal, professional identity. And this is something that is going to be present all along and all the material that you prepare for them. Modeling needs to be present. I don't know if you're dealing with likes and dislikes. First, model the use of expressions like, I dislike, I hate, I can't stand, I just love, etc., with personal information. Personal information. So in a way, the student gets a hint of who you are as a human being, as a social being, right? You need to consider your student's context. Okay. I don't know. Let's talk about tourism. Let's talk about New York. With all due respect, my colleagues, how many of our students have the possibility to visit another country? What if, instead of that, we promote tourism at a local level? I don't know. Every time that I have asked my students to talk about a tourist place, I always tell them about Gorbea, which is a little town uh, to the southern part of Temuco. Gorbea, for God's sake, some people don't even know its name. But it's beautiful, by the way, it's beautiful. But this is something that we need to consider, our students' context. New York, Paris, London, Japan, Tokyo, etc. Wow, we are in the middle of the pandemic. Let's take care of our students. Let's take care of our people. We need to promote metacognition. But that is something that we will deal with later on, all right? We always need to think about an adequate timing for the knowledge skill to be digested. Otherwise, we do things in a hurry, or we just get too short on whatever it is that we want to develop. You need to answer what, what to teach, what for, what is the point, what is the purpose of learning that, how is it better to learn uh, your whatever it is that you're teaching, and when the time that you require to successfully accomplish this. It's extremely important to use and promote the development of the so-called 21st century skills, reflection, to adopt a critical perspective towards everything. It's not everything external, it can also be internal. What about my lack of motivation? What about my sort of indifference or indifferent attitude towards everything that is going around me? What about collaboration? Yes, it can be included in a learning handout. Now, this is kind of a visual strategy for us to remember. And I would like to focus on one of the details that you can see in this beautiful infogram. Use of first language. We do not demonize the use of Spanish in our classroom. Of course, the proportion of use cannot be 80% in Spanish, 20% in English. It doesn't work that way. But sometimes abstract concepts are really difficult to get and are difficult to define, describe, paraphrase, etc. Well, to use Spanish, a little bit of Spanish will not cause a bigger harm or bigger damage. No, that cannot be that hard. All right. Well, and you have the use of visuals and realia, reading out loud, modeling, using gestures, body language. My colleagues, you have no idea how impactful it has been for me, at least, to teach through this screen. I'm short, but this one really limits my body. Uh, my goodness, this is really, really hard. Okay. Um, You need to connect to the background knowledge. You need to use good sentence structures starters. I always use some breaking questions, questions that in a way place our students in a difficult position because they make them think. All right. I love why in my classroom. I love why in my learning handouts. Now, once again, Mentimeter is waiting for you because it's time to shake your everybody's neurons. All right. So please, let's talk about metacognition. Let's go to Mentimeter and answer this question. All right. Metacognition should be promoted through what? There you have 5 different options. Okay. Please answer that. Remember that Mentimeter is on the upper right corner within the yellow icon. Remember, this is about decision making. All right. Wow, colleagues, you surprised me. I'm gladly surprised. Um, this makes me really happy. Yes, sometimes we believe that all these pedagogical elements like rubrics, success criteria, checklist, etc., 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 are the ones that promote metacognition. But the answer is only one. First, what is metacognition? What is metacognition? Now, metacognition is the student's ability to be aware of what they are thinking about and choose a helpful thought process. Okay? Uh, this is extremely, extremely important. All right? In other words, is teaching how to think, teaching um, how to become aware of our thoughts and our chains of thoughts. They are always occurring. But to promote metacognition or to teach metacognition, we need to have into consideration what it does. And metacognition captures a student's ability to first analyze how or he or she thinks, to have high self-awareness and control of our thoughts. I mean, through metacognition, we, in a way, we will lower the pace of our thoughts in order to have a better organization of ideas. And this one also helps us choose an appropriate and helpful strategy for the task at hand. It depends on the task, and it depends on the thinking process that we need to adopt in order to successfully accomplish or finish the task that we are had. And the question is, how do I promote it in my learning handouts? There's only one answer, and most of you were absolutely right. We always promote it through questions, always through questions. And why is that? Because questions make us think. So, just a few examples of some helpful questions. And remember, metacognition does not to be promoted at a specific time. We can have it before, while, and after. This is like a class, for God's sake. Yes. Questions for before. Is this similar to a previous task? Do I need to do the same? Do I need to use the same strategy? Ah, what do I want to achieve? Or what is it that they're asking me to do? Or what should I do first? And this is something that will be helpful for everyone. It doesn't matter what kind of thinking the person processes. Let's say that I have a diverse way of thinking. What if I have an inductive way of thinking? What if I have a deductive way of thinking? What if I have this mess in my head? Well, these questions help my head, my neurons to get in order. All right. Then, while I am doing this, am I on the right track? What can I do so different? What can I do differently? Who can I ask for help? Sometimes we teachers are not walking dictionaries. Some we teachers are not students again. What we need to and where we need to make our students understand is that help can be found in different sources. And this is something that metacognition can promote, to find the right person that will provide us the right help at the right moment, depending on the right task. Now, after we have finished, we ask, what worked well? Can I apply this to other situations? Can I extrapolate the skills that I have used here in order to apply them later on in some other opportunity in my life? Well, these are the things that we need to consider. And whenever we notice, we realize that we have done something not in the best way, we wonder, what could I have done better? What could have been done differently, etc., etc. Um, these questions will help us promote, and they can be included, help us promote metacognition, and they can be included in our learning handouts. Okay? Now, there is a scale, there is a very famous ladder that has to do with thinking, all right? And it's always bottom up. What have I learned? That is the easier thing. It's easier because it's very concrete. You are answering just what. But then it becomes more complex because we need to say how. What was the process that I went through in order to acquire this knowledge? And then I need to answer, okay, and what is this learning useful for? All right. In other words, that is my why. And then on what other occasions can I use it? And then how can I use the same information, the same process, the same strategy in order to make it work in a different context? Those answers will definitely, those steps will definitely be promoting metacognition among our students. Something that we criticize a lot, let's be frank. Many times we criticize the newer generations just because we believe that they don't have such a critical attitude towards everything that is going around them. And let me disagree. I just love young people because they question everything. Sometimes we are not fully prepared to give them answers. And that's why. And this is sometimes has to do with power. But that's a different discussion. All right. But yes, I believe that our students have all the potential to develop metacognition all the time. And our learning handouts is a great opportunity to do so. Now, one last breath. Yes, just one last breath. Mentimeter, please. Mentimeter. This is the last question. And I see that many people are talking about feedback. And this is our last breath. All right. Feedback. Please, let's go to Mentimeter. Remember, upper right corner on your screen, you have the question. Only one answer. There we go. There we go. Oh my God, lots of answers. Okay, positive reinforcement and comments to our to students' work. There you go. But definitely positive reinforcement. Well, let's let's find out. Let's find out. Thank you very much for your answers. Positive reinforcement. Some people say yes. Well, we need to understand that there are different forms of feedback. And our focus, because it's in our learning handouts, we are going to go through what we call feedback that really works, all right? And feedback that works will have certain specific characteristics. And there is always this constant tension between feedback and evaluation. Yes, but please, I want you to get into this business as my colleagues. All right. First, how do we normally use evaluation? Well, to rank or order students hierarchically, depending on the results. Because of the results, we can distinguish between the weak and strong learners. Uh, of course, an evaluation, a formal assessment can certify the level of knowledge acquired during a given period of time. But I don't know, I don't know you, but I'm older probably. Tests and evaluations have been used as a measure of control, all right? And the question is, where is the pedagogy in all of this? Where is the pedagogy? We don't find it. Pedagogy, you know, this idea of teaching and learning, this two-way street that sometimes gets too wide and we get lost in it. Pedagogy. Feedback that works is formative feedback. And this is a pedagogical intervention which should provide information to bridge the gap between the learning objective and the current state of a student. This is it, or a group, of course. The idea of feedback is to bridge the gap until both our student and the learning objective got together. But to do this, we need to consider certain characteristics that feedback should have and or shouldn't have. Now, feedback, again, is a two-way street. So it's not only information for the student, but also information to the teacher. Because it tells the student how he or she is doing in whatever it is that we're teaching and how we are doing regarding our planning, our strategies, the methodology that we're using, etc. But feedback needs to have, again, certain given characteristics for it to work. So let's demystify. What is not formative feedback? What is not formative feedback? Global evaluative comments or reinforcing ones that only state a judgment. And there you go. Grades are not feedback. Percentage of achievement are not feedback. Success criteria, very well, enough, in need of improvement, not accomplished. They are not formative feedback. They just express the state of things. Whenever we say, excellent, great job, you can do better, stickers, smiley faces, sad faces, etc., are not formative feedback. Yes, as in the image you have there in that slide, we believe one thing and we see other thing. All right, our perception becomes altered. Why these elements do not work as formative feedback? Because sometimes students get dependent on these types of stimuli. All right, and sometimes we are just praising them because they worked, they made the effort, but they don't get it. They don't get it. Sometimes they just take care about the final result, the grade, but they don't even know why they got that grade. So that is not formative feedback. What else is not formative feedback? To give advice or suggestions or overcorrecting. I don't know. When we say concentrate more next time, you need to add examples in your report. Or this one, I love this one. When your student tells you, "I'm agree with you," and you just with red, you mark it X. You say, "I agree." And what is the problem with these two different examples? First, when you correct, the student does not go through this analytical process in which he will understand why this is wrong, or how it could be expressed in a different way or in a proper way. Whenever we give a piece of advice like concentrate more, or come on, get rid of those headphones because you cannot listen properly, we are solving the problem, but we are not telling them how to solve the problem. Remember, feedback that works is the one that covers both the student and the teacher. The learner gets to know through formative feedback what he or she knows and can do, what he or she doesn't know or can do, and what she or he can do to get there, to achieve the learning objective. And when we talk about teachers, what is the information that we should receive through the feedback? Well, what has worked and what hasn't, and what can I change to improve or accelerate a given learning? Now, how do we give proper feedback? Feedback needs to be opportune, on time. Feedback doesn't work when everything is when it's too late. It doesn't work because there's nothing else to do it. It needs to be on time. It needs to be goal oriented because sometimes our feedback is focusing on the person, which is wrong. We are providing feedback based on the given task and the learning objective that needs to be accomplished. Feedback needs to be understandable, especially for our students. Sometimes we use words that are really hard to get, or concepts that they just don't get. Um, Even the X and the tick, when we say something is wrong or right, yeah, but they don't get to know why that is wrong or right. It needs to be manageable. What does it mean? Then it needs to be understood, comprehended, and it needs to promote actions, actions that in a way will get them reach the goal that has not been accomplished or something that can be improved because there's always room for improvement. It needs to be action driven. Again, it needs to be, okay, you go there, you do this and you do that in order to develop this. You're not giving them the solutions. You're just providing the students with the right resources in order to find a solution. It needs to be constant. It cannot be once in a while. It cannot be at the end of the period. It cannot be, how could I say, a random and sudden appearance in our practice. No, it needs to be present all along. Now, whenever we talk about learning handouts, please don't do it. Please don't do it. I love that picture because yes, some of our students are begging us not to do them. Some tips to keep in mind. Let's avoid spelling mistakes. Yeah, we understand that sometimes we are in a hurry, etc., etc. It's not our native language. But remember, every time we create a handout, there is a piece of our identity, professional identity in there. Let's avoid spelling mistakes. I don't know. It has occurred to me, always based on my experiences. Sometimes we include activities that do not help the achievement of the learning objective that has been placed in that handout or that activity. I mean, that activity needs to have a purpose. It needs to be connected. It needs to have a logical way to be joined to the learning that we want to produce. Let's avoid too technical language. Sometimes we love being academic and sound academic like, but what do we want? Do we want our students to become, I don't know, formal users of the language, or we want really, really good users of the language in communicative situations? It's all about interactions and transactions. That's why our handouts should promote that. Handouts should work in a way that as our students get to know us a little bit better and we get to know our students better too. Eternal learning handouts. Well, we talked about this. Sometimes we have, I don't know, uh, an, a handout that can be done only in, let's say, 2 weeks. I don't know, giving it like 3 hours a day. Really difficult to finish and hard to finish. And just our students get bored. Okay, the same activities over and over again. That is really, really hard. And it's boring too. Then this is super unfair. This is like playing dirty. When you tell your students that the handout is going to be graded, but after you have given it to them, it's not fair. They need to know in advance. Um, it's fair play. It's fair play. Just because activities, oh, this is too short. What else do I include? What else? What else? And you just do it. No, activities need to have a purpose. Activities that imply the use of heart to access material. I don't know. To do the following activity, you need to access the website, you need to open an account, download 3 different files, and later on you put them together in a blender, and whatever it is that you get, you can answer the 3 first sentences of this. No, come on, colleagues. Let's be, let's be, let's use our criterion properly. We are in moments in which to have access to certain materials is really, really hard. Now, in summaries, our learning handouts should include objective, clear, student-centered, achievable, measurable, timed learning objectives. State what and why our students are doing them. They need to avoid copy-paste without addition. All the questions are in Google, but all the answers are in our students, and that makes the difference. And remember, Tom and Mary do not exist. Our handouts should be organized through modeling, practice, and sharing. They should promote metacognition for questions, and they should include effective feedback. Without feedback, it's pointless. Pointless. I mean, our students get lost. And it's their right to get lost. That's why we are there. Now, dear colleagues, just to finish and to wrap this up, please never forget, we do not only teach what we know. Yes, we know English and we love the language, etc., etc. We teach that. But we do not only teach that, we teach who we are. Our identity is at all times at stake. And this is something that we need to consider. Just to finish this presentation, this is a liberty that I'm taking. Is in the love and memory of my friend and brother that passed away a month ago, Professor Pablo Villamoreno from the Católica Valparaíso University. I miss him a lot, and I really wish that you would have had the opportunity to meet him. Wow. Wow, colleagues, for your attention. Thank you very much. There you have my email. I'm open to receive your comments, your questions, your suggestions, your criticism. Yes, I'm always there. Thank you very much for your time and your presence here. And now I'm open to receive some questions if you want to.
Back during long distance learning.
Sorry?
How do you give effective feedback during long distance learning?
Good question. It all depends. If you're working with printed material, probably you need to receive it back. This is how the way I've seen many of our public schools are working. So how do you work? Through different negotiations that you make with the students. First, you need to clarify what you're correcting and why you're correcting them. Effective feedback should show the student where the mistake is, and you should offer some alternatives for them to choose which strategy to use in order to avoid the reoccurrence of that mistake. If you have the opportunity to have, I don't know, face-to-face virtual lessons, well, it can be oral. But most importantly, you need to remember to focus the feedback on the task itself and not the person who receives it. So try to be formal, try to be cordial, try to provide feedback through questions. Instead of saying, this is wrong, and say, this doesn't sound to me well. Why is that? How do you think you could express exactly the same in a different way? Um, I wouldn't say it like this. Can you come up with a different way to say whatever it is that you're saying? And in that way, the student will receive it back. I have seen also as a strategy that some teachers are creating a sort of bank of different possibilities, common recurrent mistakes that students make, and they just create a new handout in which, okay, these mistakes are taking place in our classroom, and let's pay attention why this is wrong, and it becomes uh, a collective way, a collaborative way to solve the situation, and feedback does not become in a vertical way from the teacher to the students, but also from peers, which makes it uh, more community-like. And that's one of the best ways that I've seen feedback work.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Rodrigo. We have another one from Maria Los Angeles Rodriguez
Mhm,
Moya. She
mhm.
asks, how can we use a correct feedback without have an impact on affective filter? I mean, working with shy students.
Well, it needs to be private. It needs to be clarified that feedback is not being personal, so it shouldn't be taken in a personal way. It should be taken in an academic way. Yes, affective filter is a very sensitive issue because we take care of it. Okay, the people that know Krashen and his theory. Um, I have always told them that every time every time that I need to give feedback to someone that is shy, it's always in private, is always using nice words, it's always using nice words, but saying whatever it is that I need to say. Assertiveness needs to be present there. Otherwise, the message may get confusing, and then the student does not understand feedback. It's never personal. It's never personal. It's task or goal oriented. That's the only way it works.
Excellent. Well, and the last question comes from David Solsona, and he asks, how would you work metacognition with young learners and very young learners?
Oh, they love why. They love why. uh, they need to be asked why all the time because they need to elaborate from their experiences. They don't have the cognitive awareness of everything that is going on in their heads. They just respond to sort of impulses. But when you ask them why, they will give you beautiful reasons. And you, in a way, direct those questions. I used to work with preschoolers, and it was amazing. It was amazing how they loved why. And of course, you ask them why, and you need to allow them to answer in their mother tongue because you want communication to take place. You cannot punish them or penalize them because of the answers that they give you.
Absolutely. Well, thank you again, Rodriguez. And this is the end of the presentation. We want to thank all the attendees, teachers, colleagues, and all the community in education. Thank you, SAM, and thanks. We want to thank University of Dayton Publishing for this great chance to learn more. And well, hope to see you soon. But before you leave, please fill out the evaluation, which is the top corner to the Menti icon, so as to have your feedback and your comments with us. Okay, so thank you again,
Thank you
and
very
let's
much.
see you soon. Thank you, Rodrigo.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, there is the icon. It's the green one. So
Yes.
please fill it out. Okay, some feedback here. Thank you so much. It was great. Thank you. Excellent. Positive reinforcement. So touching, Rodrigo. Pablo was my friend too at PUTV. Wow. Are you reading the comments?
Yes, I am.
Thank you, Rodrigo. Thank you. Yes, very good feedback. Thanks a lot for your work. I enjoyed it a lot. Sorry for your loss. Thank you, Rodrigo. Thanks for your presentation. It was very useful for me and for all of us, I think. Excellent webinar.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Interesting and emotional. You were very clear. I'm so sorry for your loss. I'm really grateful for this webinar. I'm sorry for your personal loss. Thank you, Alex. Thank you, Carolina. Thank you, Marjorie, Carla, Javier, Tatiana. Yeah, they're now finishing, the evaluation. So yes. That's perfect. Got new comments here. Thank you, Rodrigo. This was a very useful and meaningful for me. Miss you. Andrea Green.
Oh,
yeah,
Andrea Green. Yes.
I miss Profe Viles Monitos. Thank you for your... okay. All right. Excellent. Okay, the presentation, I think it is in the following URL, www.udayton.cl/webinar/. And Tamara Jimenez saying, thank you, Rodrigo. Miss you, my dear teacher, from a grateful student.
Yes. Still what? Do we have still people?
Yeah, they're still here. Some people, I think they're finishing, the survey, but most of them, they did it already. Okay, I think we're done. So it was, again, colleague, it was a pleasure to be with you today again.